as we move along, more people are kind of changing their stance on it as we see how other states and how much other states have generated in taxes and been able to help a lot of these bills have the first certain amount of taxes go to schools, go to roads, go to different state projects, which could always help Texas residents in general.
Welcome to Higher Law, a cannabis podcast from the Dykema Law Firm. I'm your co-host, Denise Mayfield. I'm a partner at Dykema's Intellectual Property Practice Group.
And I'm Antonio Cifuentes, associate at Dykema and a member of the firm's corporate and finance practice group.
So for more episodes, you can find us at dykemapodcast.com, youtube.com/dykemalaw, or by searching a Higher Law wherever you get your podcasts. So on today's episode, Antonio and I are going to look at a recent article that we published called High Hopes on 420, the current status of cannabis laws in Texas. Right, Antonio?
Right. So I think before we get started, if we could talk about, Denise, what interests you or what made you interested in this space, in this cannabis space in Texas?
Sure. So my interest kind of came up from my prior life as a researcher, and I actually did studies in animals looking at THC, which is a psychoactive component of marijuana, for many years before coming to the law. So it's finally coming to maturity, don't you think, Antonio?
Definitely, I think so.
So how did you
Um,
get interested in this space?
Definitely. So, I mean, I've always kind of kept an eye on as how it's kind of interesting the federal versus state stance on especially cannabis and how different states have decided to kind of go their own way. I noticed how Texas, being such a large state and so much money coming through here, how there's, it's almost inevitable that at some point Texas will be, open up to more medicinal use and definitely recreational use eventually. And that's going to open up the field for businesses to come in and dispensaries to open up, licenses that need to be acquired by these dispensaries. Everything that comes along with a state opening up its doors. So I just kind of saw the business potential there, and I'm interested in kind of getting in on the ground floor and seeing where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I think those interests kind of mesh with what I mentioned before, meaning there are a lot of good things that the various components of marijuana can do for people and treating anxiety and a variety of pathologies. And as I mentioned before, that's been kind of my thrust. So let's talk about what happened in the legislative session. I'm going to let you jump into that first, if you would, Antonio.
Sure, definitely. So just to touch on our previous post, kind of blog that we posted, kind of funny enough on 420 of this year. So Texas in general has had a very long history with cannabis and legalization. El Paso, Texas, which is where I grew up, was the first city in the country to make it illegal to own any or to possess any marijuana. Um, and throughout the years, Texas has remained very strict in those in that aspect. Statewide, is still illegal. Any amount um, outside of Delta 9 or CBD products, which we can maybe speak of later on. But in
Yeah.
general terms, there's no amount that the state allows you to have. Different kind of major cities, Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, El Paso, have come out with local municipal and other initiatives, kind of having like a catch and and destroy and release. A police officer will pull you over, find you have marijuana on you, and either throw it away or they give you a citation, depending on how much it is. it's not an egregious amount. So there's definitely, public sentiment in the state of Texas is definitely leaning towards a more open um, uh, cannabis space.
Hmm.
Um, and as you brought up, this latest legislative session, we had a House Bill 1805, which was introduced to the House of Representatives. It was seeking to increase the amount that somebody with a medicinal um, reason to have,
Yeah.
with the medicinal need, uh, to have the amount. So it went from, right now it's 1% by weight of THC that somebody can have.
Which is about
Uh,
1 gram per dose, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And right now, the bill was trying to increase it to 10 milligrams per dosage unit. So they are trying to expand the definition of low THC cannabis, so that it includes, any chronic pain that a doctor would otherwise prescribe an opioid, and a debilitating medical condition designated by the Department of State Health Services. Now, unfortunately, this did not make it past the it made it past the House, but it did not pass the Senate, where it died. Um, However, it did pass the House with kind of by an overwhelming majority, 127 votes for and 19 against. And it just went to the Senate and kind of died in the Senate, unfortunately.
It's kind of interesting. Antonio and I were chatting about how when the expansion of eligible conditions for which marijuana could be prescribed was changed back in 2021, so it expanded the conditions that you could use THC products for to include cancers, multiple sclerosis, post traumatic stress disorder, and what have you. And what was really interesting is that it went through the House and Senate through different committees, and lo and behold, it was enacted into law. But this most recent round, it wasn't enacted into law, and it went to different committees in the Senate. So you kind of wonder about that when it was basically to do the same thing, expand it to more conditions. So what do you think about that, Antonio?
So the original expansion of the Compassionate Use Act, which was in 2021, the bill was also introduced in the House of Representatives. It was it went through the Public Health Committee. It passed, and then it moved over to the Senate, where it was referred to the State Affairs Committee. And then there they went through a few votes. The bill was amended, went back to the House, but it ultimately passed.
Yep.
So in the House Public Health Committee and in the Senate, the State Affairs Committee. Now, this latest bill
Yeah, very
started in
positive.
the
Sounds
House,
very positive. Yeah.
right? And so this
Yeah.
this latest bill passed the House, also, with flying colors, if you will, by overwhelming majority. And then it was referred to the Senate, to the Health and Human Services Committee in the Senate, a different committee. And then from there, they kind of punted it over to the Water, Agriculture, and Rural Affairs Committee, which a different committee, and from, I guess, not truly looking up what that committee handles, it seems to be that they were punting it to these different committees to politically motivated so that it wouldn't pass or something like that. But definitely strange, the committees that it went to.
Yeah. I'll be fair and say maybe found less favor than it did the 2021 proposals that did go through. And to me, that's really interesting because it's now come to be more of a political football than really a question of public health and placing Texas in the forefront in terms of business opportunities in this space. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, um, opening the doors, albeit incrementally, expanding the definition of low THC, moving to, include more medical uses. All of these kind of steps definitely open the door for definitely for business, but in general, the according to a study made by the University of Houston, 82% of Texas voters, an overwhelming majority, support the medical use of marijuana, and 67% of voters are in favor of recreational, opening the doors use in Texas. So, definitely, public sentiment is definitely on the side of opening the doors, at least a little more for in the medical
Exactly.
space.
Exactly. And in 2021, we did see some forward movement, and every single legislative session that has happened since then has included a bill that has proposed some kind of expansion of the conditions that it would be used for, as well as um, the particular fines and other issues that arise if you get caught with amounts that are above what right now the Texas law allows you to have, and possibly even put you in jail. So it's still a criminal. It's still a criminal offense to have marijuana or a product with THC above, what is it, 0.3%? Isn't that right, Antonio?
That's correct. Yeah, 0.3% is
Oh,
what the Delta 9. Uh, I guess cannabis has. That's I mean they sell that at
right.
convenience stores. They sell that kind of everywhere. But
Yep.
right now, yeah, it's 0.3% THC that is allowed to be in anything that you buy, and that's currently right now. I think you just have to be over um, 18 or 21, and you can purchase those products.
Yeah. So I guess we have to look forward to the next legislative session in 2025. I think it was January 2025. Um, my thought is there will be more bills proposed along these same lines, perhaps including the same expansion of medical conditions to be approved for medicinal use of marijuana at the 10 milligram per dose rate, which is what many other states in the United States have as their medicinal THC limit. And we can become more consistent with what other states are doing right now and be able to then compete in the business, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's at this point there's very big players in the industries that are always kind of keeping an eye on a big state like Texas. Um, you know, Once the law is going to ease up and kind of catch up to kind of the general census is in the nation and in Texas in particular, um, it'll definitely invite plenty of businesses to grow within the state. There's plenty of people in the state that are kind of waiting around to see, once these laws ease up, they can open up a dispensary. They can, have a grow operation. Texas is known for its farming.
Right. On that point, Antonio, yeah, I was going to mention that just because, the Texas legislator didn't pass this past proposed bill doesn't mean that people are sitting on their hands. And in fact, in Austin, um, a third approved grow facility obtained a license. It doesn't sound like very many, but it was progress because before they were only two. So now there are three, at least in Austin. It's a grueling process and very expensive, but we're making movement.
Yeah, agreed. And as we move along, more people are kind of changing their stance on it as we see how other states and how much other states have generated in taxes and been able to help. A lot of these bills have the first certain amount of taxes go to schools, go to roads, go to different state projects, which could always help Texas residents in general.
Absolutely. So it's a matter also of taking care of our own population here in Texas and letting them have access to the same sorts of therapeutic and other agents that residents of other states have. To me, that's really important. Well, Antonio, I really don't have a whole lot more to say. We just got to wait and see and continue to push it forward. Thoughts?
Yep, agreed, agreed. It was a little unfortunate what happened this last legislative session, but a lot of hopefully good, a lot of publicity, a lot of
Yes.
residents of the state kind of realizing the potential that there is here. So I think it's always a good step in the right direction.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, Texas is such a big agricultural state. I think that tells us it could be a huge boon to the Texas economy if that moved forward. Don't you think?
Definitely.
That's it for us today. Thank you for listening. As always, you can find us at dykamapodcast.com, youtube.com/Dykema Law, or by searching a higher law wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Denise Mayfield,
And I'm Antonio Cifuentes.
and we look forward to seeing you next time on A Higher Law.